Hello guys, I wanted to show you how I put on a border to hide all these little tails, because that is one of the biggest deterrents to doing mosaic crochet, is that at the end you're going to have to deal with all these little tails. There are a few projects where you're going to leave the tails, maybe a scarf, right? You would want fringe on the end. Obviously you wouldn't cut it this short, that would be a funny looking scarf, but a scarf, or maybe like a placemat if this was larger. I think fringe on a placemat wouldn't be too horrible. But for a lot of projects, you're going to want to cover them up. I don't know anybody who wants to take the time to like sew them in, weave them all in. So you do want to start by knotting them all. I just tie this next to each color because you don't want them to come undone. They're hidden, but you want them to still not come undone, right? So this little pattern, this is my maxi tiles square. You can see it has a square all the way around it. That's the chart. And these little one back, one back, one back, one back, those are not part of the chart. That's our joining stitches and our end stitches. So you can, I've seen other tutorials. I even made a photo PDF in my Facebook group where I put a slip stitch, a surface slip stitch, I suppose is what it's called, all the way around. So that would be where you're not putting it over the top. Everything is just going on the surface. See what I'm saying here? You're going through and you're just making a line, and then you have a line on the back and a line on the front. And that is nice. It does keep things quite even, but I want to tell you something. I'm lazy and I don't want to do that extra step. And for some projects, it's probably worth it, but I want to show you the lazy version. And I don't know if the lazy version will work on every pattern or if it just works on mine because I have this extra line. So up here, this is what I do. I just use the back loop. You don't really need that long of a tail. Let's not be crazy. Okay, and there are different ways to join. I'm just going to do 2 like this. That's going to count as my double crochet up there. And you could do a single crochet border if you wanted. I'm going to do a double. And so now we're going to put, you have to make, oops, I'm not holding this very good. I'm trying to show you in the video, but I should better just hold it properly. I call it an envelope border because you're making 2 sides of the envelope to hide your tails inside. It can also be called the double border because you're making 2 sides of a border, right? You're doing a border twice, the double. It looks so much better. And as much as I do like to be lazy, I think the extra step is worth it. When I'm doing my interlocking crochet, I'm pretty lazy and I just do that single crochet border. It's just quick and it goes all the way around. And I feel like it is worth it. And for this, I do like the double border, but I just am lazy about going to get it there. Oops, too much talking. Okay, so here's where we come into the laziness. Working on the back, in my corners, I put 2 chain. You can put 3 if you're finding it's curling up too much. And now you can see I have these stitches here, and then these are my joining and end stitches, right? So this is the space that I want to use. Oops. And you can kind of pay attention to the front and the back at the same time to get your straight line. If you do that surface slip stitch, this is how you would have a straight line to work off of, right? And then you would pick up the stitches that you had just made. But this is my lazy version. So I look through here and I say, okay, I want to keep it on this line. So I've used that stitch. Now the next row here is there. That's where I want my next stitch to go into. And it is handy to use a color that is not the color you're working with before, so that you can see what you're doing. But maybe when you're really skilled at that, you'll want them to blend into each other a bit more. I just picked a scrap ball of yarn, that's all. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going through and I'm finding where do I want to put my stitch. I'm just trying to make it line up with this I have a nice straight line all the way along the edge. So I'm going under the row and I'm hooking the other row. That's how I'm joining it together. It can be difficult if your stitches are too tight. It would be difficult to get in there. But especially on big blankets, I feel like that surface slip stitch, it just takes so long. And I didn't find that it made that much of a visual difference. Maybe it's just my lazy eyes too. Maybe I just don't look close enough. But I do think that it has its place. But for me, I do like the lazy option as well. So you can see this is where that purple was. And I'm going to hook it over to the next row and go through. And it does get annoying with these little tails in the way, but let's see, where's my next stitch? Oops. Am I still in the video? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to go over. So I'm going to make it quite a long video to show you, just because I think you can fast forward to it if you're like, well, I've seen enough, I get the point. If you want to see lots of me struggling and practicing through it to see that it's normal to not be quick at this, that's cool too. Sometimes I think that's what we need, is just to be able to see that other people are doing it. And obviously we don't need to match stitch for stitch, but the concept is here and you can watch me do it, and maybe you're still working on your square so you don't have hands to press the fast forward button. I don't know, but I don't think it hurts anyone to put an extra long video. I mean, it's not extra long. I'm not gonna put 2 hours up. That would take me forever. Do you know, rendering these videos, I push the buttons and I say, okay, upload the video to YouTube. And then YouTube says processing. And it'll be like a 20-minute video and it'll process for like 2.5 hours. And I was like, holy cow. So then one time I put up like a 20-minute video and it processed for like 4 hours. I'm like, well, that's not even. I don't know why. Sometimes it just must be my servers. Maybe our internet was weird that day. I don't know. We live out in the middle of nowhere. Sometimes our internet gets weird. So we're almost to the corner. Not quite there yet. So what I want to do, well, you can see up at the top, kind of this one stitch there. There's nothing on it there, but that's okay, right? So that's when we're going to match that visually here at the bottom. There's nothing there. We're just going to start doing our 2 for the corners, and then we're going to do the back loop only. We're going to save the front loop for the front of the double border. And if you had done, when you're doing your chain or your foundation chain, you get this nice border at the bottom if you're using that back loop. So that's one of the benefits of using a back loop when you start, because it gives you the V's at the bottom. So possibly, I don't know, I guess you would still have 2 stitches to go through. I think you would still be able to find 2 stitches if you hadn't used the back bump. But that just occurred to me just now, that perhaps yours doesn't look like this at the bottom. And maybe that's a problem for some people. But it can't be that hard to find a place that is just even around, right? That's the benefit of crocheting too. I think sometimes that's what scares people, is they want to do things the right way. And you know, the right way is just what works. There is no crocheting king that comes around and says, you've done that wrong. You can you can do things and you can do a little trial and error. Oh, my dishwasher was on. That was a bit loud, wasn't it? I should go turn that off. I turned off my washing machine. It's too loud. I did a couple extra stitches. Sorry, that didn't get on the video. I'm at the corner, so I'm doing chain 2. And I don't need to cover that right there, so I'm just going to go right under it. I'm going to cover the white stitches a little bit, not too far. Try to be consistent with your other side, although as long as you're consistent with itself, that's okay. So you see how you're getting that bump, and it kind of is going over each row. So that's what we're going to try to keep doing that over on this side. We're going to go in, that's where we were, go over the white row. And we're going to go, the bump comes out of the same place. We'll go over the blue. It looks a bit separated just because of the nature of the stitches, but I try to just keep the blue together, if that makes sense. There's no right or wrong way. You can do it however it's working for you, okay? So that's how it's okay to do a little trial and error. Am I still in the video? Oh yeah, there we go. So I kind of go over 2 there just to keep it even. It sort of looks a little different, I don't know. My photo tutorial that I put in the files in my Facebook group, I use a bright red for this because I wanted you to be able to see the stitches. And I hope that using this purple is helpful still. And it's just a little muted because I ran out of that red. It was just a random red that I had in the scrap bucket, you know. And that's what a lot of my yarn is scraps. So my next blanket that I'm working on, it's a secret blanket right now. It has a lot of colors in it that are just scraps. So some are longer than the others. But I'll show you that in a couple months. I'm going to give myself lots of time to work on it. I've been feeling kind of like the last 4 months since I've started designing, I feel like I'm running down a hill and it's super fun. The hill is like really steep and I'm gaining momentum and it's really exciting, but I feel a little bit like my feet are just going to fly out from under me. I'm going too fast. How can I make it stop? But I don't want to stop because everyone else seems to be on bikes and they're going really fast and I want to keep up, but I don't know, maybe that's not the right analogy, but it's kind of how I feel. So this is that stitch we're going to ignore again. I'm going to do the back loop. I did my 2 chaining for the corner, just in case you missed that. See, my scrap yarn is, I don't even know if it's going to have enough to do the double border, but we're going to pretend. So we're almost back to our front. Now, depending on how you did this, there is such a thing as a standing double crochet. And if you want a really professional look, that's the way to go. It's really nice. It looks perfect if you can figure it out. And there's tutorials on that. Maybe I'll do another one later. But I did 2 chains. So you can see here, that's where I did 2 chains. This is where I am now. Okay, so we jumped a step in the video here, but this is what I've done. Come to the end, I cut it. I put my little needle here because this is how you join to make it look really seamless. As if you were going to crochet, you go under there and you pull it back, and then you can see it kind of makes this little loop. So you're going to go in there, go through the stitch all the way down, and when you pull it tight, don't pull it overly tight. You want it to kind of match the gauge that you've had going, but now you can see that they all are the same. And then you can do some loop-de-doops going around, secure it, do knots if you like, making sure you're going through the fibers of the yarn and not just the stitches. And of course, when we started, we had a tail there, so I'm going to weave that one in as well. You can leave a little bit of a tail because this is going to have a double border. Now you'll have to pay attention. This is the back, so this is actually the visible side. So I'm going to put my tail on this side over here. This is where I want the tail to be inside the border, right? And this one, I pulled it out and it's quite short, but it actually needs to go inside the other side as well. Just push it through. Could have used a crochet hook for that one, but whatevs. Okay, so they're over here, and because they're going to be hidden, I'm going to knot them. That's our back border. If you find that you need more height because your tails are long, which I would do on this one, I would do it another border. Okay, so then from here, I would chain 2 just to get up there. And then I would just do another regular border just into each stitch. You don't have to worry about front loops and back loops. I'm just going to go to the corners so that I can show you what I do in the corners. Okay, so that's my stitch. Now I have these 2 chains. So I'm going to go into the chaining spot. And then I'm going to do my 2 for the corner. And then I'm going to go into that same chaining gap. And that doesn't matter what row you're on, that's how I do the corners. And then you can see this is the stitch. I used to get confused. This is the stitch. These are the little loops I want to go under so that I'm back onto my 1 stitch for 1 stitch, right? Maybe you don't get confused there. Maybe you think that's a funny thing to point out, but that's where I used to get confused. So now it just gives you that extra height. If you find it's still pulling too much, you can put 3 chains there, okay? And once you get the double border and it's a little bit tighter, you don't have quite as much of a gap. It is a slight gap, but not as much as this looks right now. Right now it looks really gappy. Okay, get our yarn again, and we're going to do the other side, the front side. I like to start it not at the exact same place just because then you have 2 knots there and it might get kind of thicker. You can pick any random place you want. Now I'm using the front loops of those stitches that I had from before. And I'm going to do the same process here. I'm going to do chain 2, go into the next stitch because that chain 2 is counting as a double crochet. Standing double crochet would work as well. I just find them fiddly. I don't really like them. I probably just need more practice, but I've been too busy with other things. You know how it goes. So make sure I'm in the screen. Yeah, okay. So you can see each loop that you had left behind is available. So you'll get the same number of stitches, which will make it easy to sew the top ends at the end, right? So this is our corner now. 1, 2. And when we come back here, you can see this was my other one. That's what you want to make sure you get the same number of stitches, because when you join there's your envelope, right? Now you're going to join it. You want to have the same number of stitches. So you go around your little square again, or your ginormous blanket again. So I'm going to just use that. That's how I did the other one. So that's where it's going to go. And like I said, you can do the front first. You can do the back first. You can do the slip stitch, surface slip stitch if you want, if you find you like that extra piece to hang on to. I find this works just fine, and it saves me a little bit of time and a slight amount of yarn. And it does help, regardless of what you choose, it does help being able to see your stitches if you don't use one of the colors that you had in your blanket. However, I think most times you will want to use a color that is in your blanket because then it blends in a bit more. So depends on your skill level and how easily you're able to find those stitches. There we go. So we're going to go all the way around. Am I still on the screen? Oh yeah, I wasn't paying attention. You know, I get distracted. You can only focus on so many things at one time. So you can see here I only did 1 layer. So when it comes time to joining them, 1 layer isn't really enough. I wanted to show you another shortcut that I sometimes do. I did this, I only did half. There's my other shortcut. I don't do it all for the video. Okay, so I did 2 layers of the envelope border, but you can see over here it's not long enough. And now I'm going to go in this one here, yarn over, do the first half, then yarn over and do matching the stitch over there for the second half. If you've ever done decreases in others, that's what you're doing, is I'm decreasing. So I'm going to go into my front, yarn over, do the first half of that double crochet, then go into the back and do the second half all together. I like that I don't have to do an extra step of then joining my borders. So I just go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So I think we have enough to show you. So I didn't do two single row or two regular rows. I just did one row, which isn't long enough, and then I did this decreasing row. So it still gets things inside there and joins them without me having to also then do another, after I do 2 rows of everything, another row of sewing it all together. So that's just, it's a fiddly shortcut. I don't know if it really saves me time. So just some options. That's really what I'm showing you. There's no right way. There's no wrong way. Just figure out some options that you like and make your project your own.